Our next speakers today are LD Salmanson and Colin Kovas. LD is the CEO of Cherre. LD has extensive experience founding, advising, and investing in leading private technology companies. Prior to founding Cherre, LD served as executive director of Oppenheimer's private shares group after Oppenheimer acquired Greencrest Capital, a firm he co-founded to enable pre-IPO transactions in some of the largest private technology companies in the world, including Facebook, Twitter, and Uber. Prior to that, LD served as the principal of Knight Capital Group's private equity fund and previously as a captain in the Israeli army. LD earned his MBA in finance from the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School and is a Joseph Wharton Merit Scholar. LD also holds a BA, LLB, and LLM in finance and international law from IDC Herzliya. Colin Kovas is Vice President, Investment Management Strategy and Special Products at RealPage. Colin was CEO at Hypercept before being successfully acquired by RealPage. Colin provides solutions that make it easier to operate and analyze commercial real estate investments. Colin has extensive experience in providing the world's largest investors with the expertise to make data-driven decisions. Please join me in welcoming LD and Colin to the stage.
For everyone who's joining, thank you for being on. For those who don't know me, I'm LD Salmanson, one of the founders here at Cherre. We're a real estate data management analytics platform specifically designed for the real estate industry. And I have the pleasure of having Colin Kovas with me, who's VP of Investment Management for RealPage, focused on the AIM product. Previously CEO of Hypercept. Great to have you today with me, Colin.
Thanks, LD.
Awesome. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to have some fun today talking a little about kind of the future of office and how some of our mutual clients do a better job than others in getting ahead of some of the challenges that came up last year. And many of these challenges are probably not new to last year. They just kind of came up last year because they may have become more acute. But as we know, a lot of these challenges existed behind the scenes or kind of under the water that just kind of got washed away. So maybe we'll kick off with that and think about, as we think about the future of office over the next few years, we've seen, move from, cubicle or from like closed offices to cubicles to kind of open space to all these different types of options that we see today. Do we have a hub and spoke model? Do we have everybody back to the same office? Regardless of that model, what is the role of data in general and us, as managers and as people building buildings and trying to figure out how do we plan for that future?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's almost a terrible question at the same time, because I don't think that data has a role in the future of real estate. I think it is the future of real estate, right? Understanding who your tenants are, understanding where your assets are stressed or stressing or may potentially stress, right? It's risk management. And I agree with what you said up front. I think the stresses we've seen over the last 15 months have really highlighted historic challenges that have been there forever. I think we had a great streak where assets were appreciating, capital was freely flowing, and so companies weren't as concerned about how closely and tightly they manage their assets. And then as soon as the pandemic hit, I think we started to see a lot of questions about, what does my portfolio look like? Who are my tenants? Who's paying? Who's not? Who's getting PPP money? Who's not? And that was in the early days, and that's continued, all the way through to the conversation I had 45 minutes ago with the client.
It feels like our clients really don't know as much as they'd like to know generally about their buildings and about their tenants, right? So I know my tenants more or less. I know when they're up for renewal, but it feels like they're generally challenged, right? As we know, when a client asks something along the lines of, what is my exposure to lawyers in Midtown New York? And all of a sudden that's a project I have to go answer manually. Or if I think about, should I be building in, Utah, another, spoke model, or should I be building in Miami? Because that's the rage. Is Miami going to, be just as exciting, past the winter? All of a sudden it's summer in Miami. Maybe it's not as exciting to build office buildings there. It feels like they're always flying blind. Is that kind of the same feeling you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, even a better example that's also a worse example is asking a client how many properties they own today. And the number of clients that can't answer that without having to go and start digging through to see what was disposed of. A lot of them don't have that single source of the truth to look at not just their data, right? And we talk about data and real estate, we've got your data that you create internally, whether it's through a third-party manager or yourself, as you manage that asset, financial and operational data. But there's this much broader data universe of data, these data sets that you guys are pulling together, that when combined with the internal data gives a much clearer, much better, much richer picture of what's going on, not just with that building and with those tenants, but in the area, in that market, in that state, in that country, right?
I find it funny. So I have to share that when the first time the clients started asking, as part of an onboarding process, the first thing we want to see is what do we own, where do we own it? I almost thought that they were testing us, right? I figured, okay, they obviously know what they own, where they own it. Now they just want to see that it lines up with what they think, until you realize they have no clue what they own or where they own it. And the larger and more complex the organization, the less likely they know what they own or where they own it.
Correct. Yeah. And we see that a lot, right? When you start getting to 4 or 5, 800 assets across multiple asset classes, yeah, it becomes a challenge to manage all that data. And I think that the days of consolidating spreadsheets are over, right? You can't run a complex global asset management firm focused on large, complex office buildings or industrial parks based on spreadsheets. You need way more data, and you have to have it in some sort of centralized location so you can start doing stuff with that data.
And as you know, because we've been on these calls together, LPs are pushing the funds a lot more than they used to, right? So maybe, even 3-4 years ago, we don't have to go really back into the future. LPs were okay. You couldn't really measure which funds were top quartile or bottom quartile because it's really hard to measure anything objectively. And, we really didn't have serious ESG reporting or diversity reporting. And we really didn't have to answer really tough questions. But today, LPs, as we know, are a lot more, are a lot more strict. They want to have reporting monthly, not quarterly or yearly, right? They want to have reforecasting if there's any issues there. They want detailed ESG reports, even if they're not completely doing everything that we expect them to. And they want to benchmark, right? They want to see how you're performing versus NAREIT versus NACREIT, right? These are things that we see pretty regularly. And as they push their LPs, or as the LPs push the GPs or REITs, if the case of public equities, to be more specific about their data and to be able to benchmark them better, it feels like a lot of our clients are getting a little caught, off guard, right? They look at this like, okay, now I'm just unprepared, right? Up until now, this was something I was thinking about, but then now I'm unprepared. Is that what you typically see as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the stress that the LPs are under is driving more stress for the GPs. And that's on the assets they own today and the investors they have today. But we're also seeing a lot of LPs start to question where they put their money based on the maturity of the systems, processes, and data that they have. Because the more mature those systems and processes are, the richer the data sets you have, and the easier it's going to be for the LPs to get the answers that they want and the answers that they need for their constituents, right? Both internal and external. So absolutely, we're seeing a ton of that every day.
So you and I mostly work on very large asset managers, typically the largest. I mean, not to say that we don't have some smaller or medium-sized clients, but typically we work with the largest asset managers in the world and constituents around that. And the vast majority of them have already been at some point of this journey of either planning or deploying, obviously, if they're working with us. But if they're not already there, what are some of the processes that the good clients are doing to prepare for this inevitability of ongoing, probably even mark-to-market reporting or weekly reporting, right? No one's going to get away with monthly in the future. How are they preparing for, trying to figure out, what data sets do I need to connect internally? What systems do I have in place or not have in place? What data do I need? What are some of the thoughts that you have on that and what some of the good clients are doing for that?
Yeah, so I think for the clients that have started that process, the most important thing they're doing is they're making it a priority, right? It becomes a business priority driven by the leadership team to connect to the data that they have internally and externally so that they can operate way more efficiently than they do today. And how do you do that, right? And that's where the challenge comes in. I would say start with don't boil the ocean, right? These projects can be so incredibly big. They're transformative. You change process. It can be disruptive. So make sure you're thoughtful about what you're trying to do. Enlist the executive team. If you don't have executive support, you're going to have a tough time with adoption. And in any of these projects, if you don't have adoption, that's it, right? The game's over.
And I was add that one of the things that I love about working together is that, to your point, a lot of these projects feel to the management team or the technical management team, with the CIO, CTO office, as kind of this 3-year, digital transformation project. And it has been traditionally that kind of project. And what I love about what we're able to do together is say, hey, can we do that in 2-3 months? Can we get that up in 4 or 5 months, worst case scenario, right? And they look at you kind of almost, kind of like googly eyes as like a kid, like, wait, I can get all of that in kind of a short period of time. Like in our mind, you and I was like, that's not short. That still feels like a really long period of time to us, but for them, it's transformational, right? If I go down from, 3 years and $30 million to, 6 months and a fraction of that cost, I just changed their life, right? And if I got the business users on board, they're not losing attention over the next 3 years. And by the time they're done, those people have replaced, and who knows if the technical team's still there, you get to see immediate results, right? And I think that's also very compelling to them.
Yeah, I think it is. And as much as we can compress the time frame, obviously it's in everyone's best interest to compress that time frame. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So you figure out what you want to build and you start tackling those things so you get immediate wins, so that the business, the end users, the management team, they all get to see, okay, now I can see my data. So this was spun up. I've got my internal data sets. We did that in 4 months. That's amazing. Now we want to add CoStar data. Now we want to add NCREIF data. Now we want to build our own internal benchmark. That's all great, right? And building that plan is essential, and doing it with the right partners, right? The people that have the industry experience, that understand the applications and the application of the application, but also understand real estate and the nuance that comes with real estate asset management, right? It's much different than traditional private equity, where you're focused almost entirely on financials. Right, the operating data component and the market data component of real estate creates such a different spectrum of understanding and data sets that if you're just a traditional PE company, you're not going to be able to assist a real estate firm with the true challenge that they're facing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's good to contextualize for some of our viewers who may not be obvious to them how quick the value really is attainable. I mean, and to really drive that point home, as you all typically buy assets, the vast majority of the assets you buy are brokered, right? I know that a lot of people like to tout their, unique deal flow, but I think post-COVID, I think we're all realizing that, if they're taking you out for golf, they're taking out your competitors out to golf as well. There's no asset that's unique to you. And in that case, we're all kind of race to the bottom on quality, race to the top on price. And what you really want to be able to do is find assets in a differentiated manner. And then on the asset management side of the house, as we know, you manage a lot of assets, especially our clients who are not just in one sector. Most of our clients are very large asset managers, multiple asset class, multiple geographies, both sides of the capital stack, debt and equity, maybe some of the public REITs as well. So just a lot of complexity in that asset. So as we acquire more and more in assets, and some of them we manage directly, some of them we probably manage through different JVs that we have and other external managers, it gets more and more complex, and we keep buying assets and we keep adding people on the back end, right? We recently had a client who said, we have 700 people on our back end. We're really efficient. And you got to laugh, because in their mind, they're efficient. 700 people running this operation, in their mind's efficient for, roughly 1,000 assets. But of course, that should all be automated, right? You should have instant access to all of those things like reporting and benchmarking and analysis, and be able to check your variance analysis budget. Those are things that should be table stakes. They're not, but with companies like us together, they become table stakes, but they should be table stakes, right? They should be investing time and effort, not in keying in data. They should be investing time and effort into, hey, why am I lower than what I expected this month? And why are certain assets of mine performing better than others? And should I be able to buy more of those? Should I dispose some other ones? What can I do to improve performance? Those are some of the things that I get really passionate about. And it's not probably really obvious to a lot of our clients.
Yeah, I think you hit on it, right? You want, if you're an asset management firm, you've hired smart people to manage your assets, and you want your smart people who are making smart people salaries to do smart people things. Not that data entry and data collection isn't important, it's critical. And I want to talk about data collection and data validation in a second. But you want to have the people who are tasked with being accretive to the value of your assets focused on your assets and not focused on the underlying data and getting it into a platform, right? That reporting should be automated as much as possible. That data should all be flowing into a single repository so that you can very easily go in and create those reports and answer those questions, so that as your assets grow, you don't have linear growth in your staffing. Obviously, you can't double your asset count and not increase staffing, but it shouldn't be a one-to-one, right? You should break that linear growth when you have the right systems and processes in place.
So let's talk a little about data validation, right? So when I think about kind of the full data stack, there's getting data into the warehouse, there's connecting all those different external and internal data systems in that warehouse, and there's visualizing that data or displaying it in an application or things like that, right? And in that type of journey, as we know well, a lot of clients like to think about, well, I'll pull off the shelf kind of ETL tools on the technical side. I'll pull an off the shelf like Amazon data store, and I'll pull an off the shelf BI tool, and I'll just build all this on my own. And all of a sudden, 3 years later, of course, they've spent millions of dollars on infrastructure, on people, and usually have very little to show for it. Whereas you and I, obviously, the way we partner is, right, we deploy a data warehouse, we deploy specific tools for validating data as they come in, and we deploy a very dedicated AIM visualization platform that's obviously a lot more than that. It's a full management suite to allow me to answer some of those things. So why is that stack a good stack, and what do we get out of that besides being able to deploy faster that we'd otherwise not be able to get?
Well, I think we deploy faster. We've got the structure and the infrastructure in place to give our clients the things that we think they're looking for. We also have the flexibility if there's functionality, and generally not speaking functionality, it's more visualizations. If there are specific visualizations that clients want to see, we can spin those up. But having the functionality pre-built and pre-canned and ready to go, so that once you start connecting data, things turn on, it's speed to market, right? And that's critical. Now, one of the things that's really important is validating that data before it gets into that repository. So you want to make sure that your data is clean and accurate, right? So that it's data correctness is easy to check, right? You give me 1, 2, 3, 4, I put it in the system, says 1, 2, 3, 4, the data is correct. That doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate. So, generating accurate data before it gets into the system and fixing issues that you find back at the source, you don't have a recurrent process of junk data is critical, because garbage in is garbage out. And if people don't trust the data, if they log into our platforms and they see that the data is wrong, they're not going to use it. They're going to go back to their Excel files, which ultimately doesn't end up helping them. It may be a little bit easier for them in the short term, but it doesn't end up helping them, because again, you don't break that linear growth curve.
No, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, our job is to empower the asset managers and investors, right? Our job is to make them do their job better, focus less time on, plumbing and reporting, and focus on the real questions. What do I buy? How do I manage my assets better? And how do I improve performance? And that's what they're really good at, right? If you clear that time away from them and all they have to focus on is their actual day job, they'll just generate alpha, right? So if we can help them generate alpha, we're winning on our end. So our job is always to keep them obviously very engaged and keep them focused on the things that matter, instead of making them have to deal with, hey, why is this submission wrong? Let's go back to that manager and have them resubmit that. The data just should come in clean. I should get an accurate report. I should be able to trust that report. So I'm not questioning the data. I'm just going to make good, accurate decisions based on that.
Yeah, and it changes the data. It changes the questions that people ask too, right? So you go into an IC meeting and you talk about, hey, how are our properties doing in the Southwest? Well, it's a question. It's not a terrible question, but it's a question. A better question that you get when you're connected to your data is how come our office rents in North Scottsdale are 6% below market? Boy, is that a different question. And that's a scary question for a lot of the asset managers, because they've got to know that answer, right? But empowering both the asset managers and the leadership to get access to that data so they can start asking those questions is going to lead to a much better return for their investors.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, right? And I think it's unfortunate that the questions that are being asked right now which feel like low-hanging fruit, are just basic questions like, what do I own? When, to your point, I should be able to say, why am I underperforming in a certain area, right? I mean, we typically, sometimes it's even more exciting, right? As we've seen some clients, we typically outperform everyone in this type of asset class and this type of geography. And now we're underperforming somewhere else, right? And we're not really sure why. But if I look at the data, usually there's a very clear answer. Oh, you're paying, such and such more than every other one pays for this manager, or you're using an underperforming manager that underperforms in other asset classes, or you have a data leak here. Your budgeted and variance analysis are not going accurate, and you're missing a lot of expenses along the way because you're only looking, at a bad roll up of trial balances or something like that. And there's usually very easy answers once we start looking at the data. And that's what gets really exciting to me, because to your point, it's a lot more exciting figuring out, why are we 6% below or above, and how do we fix that, and how do we outperform? And I also get really excited about the long term, which I know that the vast majority of our clients are still not there yet on the journey, which is, now that I have all my data connected, I have all the external market data connected, I have every application across the house connected, everyone's using that regularly. Now I can start building some really differentiated strategies. Now I can start building what I call decision support systems, but those are, some of our clients already have data science teams, but a lot of them don't yet. That allows me to start building really cool things, which is, okay, given everything I know, based on past information, based on all my past deals, based on every single piece of information I have access to, internal and external, based on my assumptions. No two clients have the same assumption of the market. what is the likelihood of this event taking place? Is this a market that I should be excited about given everything I know or not? Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to be right or wrong, right? But now I can start narrowing that gap and saying, okay, there's a high probability that if we invest in this area at this time, we'll do really well. And it also leads to having to make decisions of what type of strategy are we? Are we a levered beta shop? Meaning all we do is, pick the right markets and pick the right timing and invest in everything there. And that's not a bad strategy if you pick the right markets and you pick the right timing, right? Versus maybe another type of shop, which is, we're a value add, right? We're really good at it. We don't care about when it is in the market, where it's in the cycle. So long as we have access to decent capital and we do our job right, we can find differentiate assets and build them. It's important to know what your strategy is, and based on that strategy, be able to deploy things in a meaningful manner.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, if you think about real estate data, we have historically been looking at our data. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we started looking at, okay, well, what are we at like effective right now today? And that shift to looking forward and not just the forward projections on your property, but the forward projections on the market, and bringing all that data together and comparing it historically to build out that predictive model. And I know predictive analytics is, we're not there yet. We're going to get there. We're real estate, so we're a little bit behind the curve on a lot of stuff, but we're going to get there. And that's going to be a really fun transition. But in order to get there, you have to get a hold of all your data, right? You've got to connect to your data and all that universe of data, LD, that you guys are pulling together, bringing that together, marrying that together to start doing complex analytics. That's the future. And it's exciting.
I want to share that a friend recently from one of the largest hedge funds reminded me that a quote inside, before we start building models, we have to start the tape recorder, referring to the stock ticker. No models make sense until the data is connected. It's garbage in, garbage out. And of course, the very first step of building a differentiated strategy is having your data in line. And we all know, I don't want to sound morbid, but the companies in the 80s and 90s that didn't adopt data strategies in the financial service industries don't exist today. They literally disappeared. And the companies that did are the biggest giants of that powerhouse today. And I would highly encourage the folks on this call who are not clients already for whatever reason, and you're not in that roadmap or a little behind, you don't have a really big window here. That's the candid answer. The folks who win and move fast are the ones who win and get an outsized part of that alpha. So you definitely don't want to be left behind here. Just on one last kind of note here. So for the clients who are not, for the folks on the call who are not clients yet, and I don't know why you're not, but for whatever reason, I'm sure there's a few who are just somehow not a client yet. What are some of the first steps that they can do to start engaging with us and make sure that they become clients? What do they need to do in-house? What do they need to do to prepare? And just kind of get a sense of what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, we talked about it a little bit earlier before, right? Come up with a plan. Like what are you trying to solve for? So understanding your business requirements and the challenges and constraints that you have builds out that plan. So know what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And then you need to understand, your output strategy and your data strategy. And there's some other components we can help with that. But really having that plan, knowing the problems you have, getting executive buy-in and making it a priority for your organization, and then finding the right partners. Obviously, we are the right partners, but that's a little self-serving too, right?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Colin, for joining me. Thank you everyone else for joining us as well. If you'd like to engage with us, we're here to help. We're really not trying to be, a solution that takes 3 years and many millions of dollars. We try to deploy really fast, add immediate value, and our job is to make your team rock stars. So if we can help with that, we win every day. So thank you, Colin. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great weekend.
Thanks all.
Thank you, LD and Colin. That was amazing. Feel free to find them in the networking app to chat more. That's it for today's general session. I hope you found it eye-opening. We're going to move straight into our tracks beginning at 2:30 Eastern Time. We'll have 3 tracks today: property tech, business technology, and the innovation stage, where you'll find founders of leading tech startups. All tracks have world-class speakers, so you can't go wrong. Have the best digital conference day of your life.